All right, what's up, everyone? Jammer here from Jammer's Wrestling Magazine Collection. And today's video, we're going to take a look back to the year 1983. 1983 was the year of the first ever Starrcade. It was the year where Bob Backlund's WWF title reign finally came to an end to the hands of the Iron Sheik. It was the year before Hulkamania was unleashed in the WWF. It was the year that, well, it was pretty much the last final year before wrestling changed. Now, did it change for the better? Some people would say maybe not. Some people who are, older do not like the cartoony Hulk Hogan era of the WWF of the 80s. I get it. I respect you for thinking that. It's cool because I feel the same way now about a lot of the current product that's being seen on TV. With that being said, though, I grew up in the 80s. I watched the Hogan era. I was a WWF fan. So everything before that, to me, doesn't seem as special. It doesn't hold a special spot to me, but I still do enjoy and respect it. I do love going back and watching those old wrestling episodes from the early 80s, from the territories. I did it for Mid-Atlantic. I did it for Mid-South. I did it for World Class Championship Wrestling. I did it for all those territories on the WWE Network. So let's take a look now here, 1983, for wrestling magazines. We start off with January 83 for PWI. It's Ricky Steamboat's comeback plan. I'm a year away from winning the NWA title. Unfortunately, he was more than a year away. He didn't win it until 1989. When he defeated Ric Flair at Chi-Town Rumble. And we get a nice photo here of the Intercontinental Champion, Ken Patera. There he is right there, folks. Kenny Patera, the world's strongest man. Up next for January, we get The Wrestler. And on the cover, we have Ivan Putski and Cowboy Bob Orton. Ivan Putski humiliates Cowboy Bob Orton. Can the Grand Wizard pick up the pieces? So that, of course, was in the WWF at the time. And we get Magnificent Morocco. Buzz Sawyer paid me to carve up Tommy Rich. So Morocco here was not in the WWF, as you can see. He would have been in Georgia. He was down... I know he did Mid-Atlantic at the time, too, because he was in the NWA Tag Title Tournament in late 82. So he was definitely not in the World Wrestling Federation at this time, which makes me think... Oh, sorry there, Steamboat, get up. Which makes me think that... Wow, this is undone. Some of these old magazines, right? But whatever. Morocco, I'm guessing Pedro Morales was Intercontinental Champion here then at the time. So, next up, Inside Wrestling. January 83, we get Captain Lou Albano and Jimmy Snuka, a partnership that was doomed from the start. And there's a good shot of them. Plus, we get Dusty Rhodes' Fear, Big John Studd is too dangerous for wrestling. That's a good, that's an interesting cover. I do like that shot of Snuka and Captain Lou. That should have been a big photo for that. That would have been nice. Sports Review Wrestling, January 83. Too much bloodshed in Georgia. Is the end near for Tommy Rich? There's a bloody Tommy Rich. And we get Wahoo McDaniel, the man who stands between Greg Valentine and greatness. So there's another one. I'm going to do it like this now so everyone can keep seeing the covers. I think that's a better way of doing it than the original way that I was doing it. I think this just looks nicer. Next up now, February 1983 for PWI, we get Dusty Rhodes weeps for Florida. They've taken over my state. And there he is with Jimmy Jam Garvin there. Or I guess he's gorgeous Jimmy Garvin here. And can Jimmy Snuka survive without Captain Lou Albano? And the poster here, this is cut on the back, by the way. But the poster here is of Ivan Putski, the Polish Power. So, nice. It's crazy to think that I got the centerfold poster still in all these old PWI magazines that I got. It's kind of incredible. February for The Wrestler, an exclusive coverage of Nick Bockwinkel regains the AWA title from Otto Wantz. So there it is. And it's an interesting cover photo they use of Bockwinkel and Otto there. It doesn't... Oh boy, that can be taken in many ways. So anyways, and down here we got Backlund, Sneak Attack Superstar Graham, the WWF belt is tainted by bloodlust. So yeah, Billy Graham back with the World Wrestling Federation, trying to get that title. That looks like an old photo. Is that an old photo? No, that's not. That's a current one. Yeah, because Billy Graham was a ninja during this time. Sports Review Wrestling. Oh, sorry, Inside Wrestling. I jumped the gun there. Inside Wrestling, February 93. Rhodes versus Funk, the bloody horror of a barbed wire fence match. There's a good shot there of a bloody Dusty Rhodes. Well, he's always bloodied, right? Let's be honest. And we got Hulk Hogan or Ken Patera, who is really wrestling's strongest man. So that would be Hulk Hogan, I would think. But no, probably Ken Patera probably was. He was in the Olympics, right? So he definitely has some physical strength going on there. Sports Review Wrestling, February 83. We get Ric Flair, I'll die before I let Harley Race become a 7-time champion. And Pedro Morales versus Buddy Rose, an unexpected explosion rocks the garden. Unfortunately for Flair, that did not happen. Harley Race did defeat Ric Flair to become NWA World Champion in 1983. Now it's time for March 83. In March, we have Pro Wrestling Illustrated. The year in review. Look at that. We got 82's best wrestlers and matches. Let's go through and see. There's Bob Backlund. I think he was Wrestler of the Year. But let's take a look here. We'll go through and see what everyone won this year. The 82 achievements. Let's check it out. Inspirational Wrestler of the Year was Rowdy Roddy Piper, with Jimmy Snuka, Mil Mascaras, and Jimmy Valiant as runner-ups for that one. Is the next one most popular? I can't tell if there's a page here. 31. Yeah, there is. What's in between? Match of the Year. Bob Backlund and Jimmy Snuka in the steel cage. And we get Backlund and Flair, Bonkwinkle and Wands, and Bonkwinkle and Wands again as the runners-up. Most popular wrestler of the year was Andre the Giant, with Tommy Rich, Hulk Hogan, and Dusty Rhodes as the runners-up for that one. We get a nice photo there of Andre the Giant as the centerfold. We get Wrestler of the Year was Bob Backlund, the WWF champion, with Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, and Jimmy Snuka in the runners-up category for that. Most hated Wrestler of the Year was Ted DiBiase, with Blackjack Mulligan, Superstar Billy Graham, and Buzz Sawyer in the runners-up category. Tag Team of the Year went to the AWA team of Jumpin' Jim Brunswell and Greg Gagne, the High Flyers, with Mr. Saito and Mr. Fuji, the Freebirds, and Ole Anderson and Stan the Lariat Hansen as the runners-up. Let's see, is there one? Yeah, here we go. Most Improved Wrestler of the Year went to Barry Windham, with Otto Wantz, Buzz Sawyer, and Rick Martel for the runners-up for that one. It's a good shot of Barry there. Manager of the Year went to James J. Dillon, with Arnold Skolin, Sonny King, and Jimmy Hart as the runners-up. So there's an early picture of Jimmy Hart. So he does look a little different than what he ended up looking like in the WWF and how he still looks to this day. Rookie of the Year went to the Armstrong Man, Brad Armstrong, from the Armstrong family. And we got Tiger Mask, Mike Rotundo, and the Great Kamala as the runners-up for that. And I think that is it, maybe. Oh, and the Editor's Award went to Lou Thez. So there you go. That is the PWI year-end award there. Popular magazine, of course, every year. I still look forward to it even now. Of course, now it's a little more ridiculous seeing who some of the people who win those awards, but back then, very cool. The Wrestler for March 83. Showdown in Charlotte. Roddy Piper's title match with Ric Flair ends in chaos, and we get a young Butch Reed there. Butch Reed powers to the top. Is he wrestling's next great superstar? Unfortunately, no, he was not. Maybe if the territories had stayed territories, he could have been, but when he became the Natural in the WWF and had blonde hair, that was kind of like, sorry, Butch. That's the cartoon character was driven hard on that one. Here we got March 83 for Inside Wrestling. Superstar Graham, the hell with Pedro, I want Backlund, and there's Terry Funk, NWA title claimant. Terry Funk demands recognition, but we demand he be banned. So that is not the NWA championship. Terry Funk had a belt created that looked like that, going around saying he was the world champion in territories, and he wasn't. What an interesting storyline that was. I was like, that to me is like way ahead of its time. That's so cool that Terry Funk did that. And it got people talking about Terry. It got him on the cover of the magazine. So, I mean, he must have been doing something right. And of course, Terry Funk no longer with us, but man, what a national treasure and an icon he was for pro wrestling up until the day he died. He really was. I mean, even in his 50s, he transcended wrestling by, main eventing ECW pay-per-views, being ECW world champion. He did it all, man. That guy, amazing career. March 83 for Sports Review Wrestling. Cowboy Ron Bass versus Ric Flair. The match only Dusty Rhodes could win. And will Buddy Rogers save Jimmy Snuka or destroy him? So Jimmy Snuka now is a good guy in the WWF, and Buddy Rogers is his manager. He got away from Captain Lou Albano, and he's going to be getting ready to feud with the Magnificent Morocco soon, who would be coming back to the territory of New York and winning the Intercontinental title from Pedro. So, all right. Now, spring 83 for the best of the wrestler. Yes, I have the best of the wrestler here. We got Ivan Putski versus Greg Valentine. Why Ivan Putski had to do Dusty Rhodes' dirty work. So there it is, right on the cover there. Nice, good shot of Putski and Valentine. He's destroying him there. Now, I don't have the wrestling superstars of 83. I'm missing all of them, but luckily I do have these special ones like The Wrestler and like this one, which is Sports Review Wrestling 1983 Annual for spring of 83. And that's the one with superstar Billy Graham and Bob Backlund on the cover. And of course, that photo of the new champions, Don Cornotto and Sergeant Slaughter of the NWA. So those are neat. I mean, again, like I said in a former video, they're just old stories from past magazines that you missed out on. But I mean, why not, right? I mean, they weren't that $1.50 back then. If you couldn't afford a $1.50 magazine, you probably shouldn't be buying wrestling magazines. Next up, we got April 83 for PWI with Mil Mascaras on the cover. Look at that. His home address, how you can write to him and save his career. There he is with I'm guessing that's the Mexican Championship, right? Like, who knows? And Superstar Billy Graham is the centerfold, and that's when he's like ninja there, the Eye of the Tiger. Man, I don't know what Billy was thinking here. It's like, I get it that he lost his hair. He went bald. He was balding, right? So he got rid of the hair. But the Superstar Billy Graham that we saw in, I believe it was late 85, he changed back to, he had the goatee, dyed it blonde, had the shades, had the earrings, had the tie-dye trunks, tights again. He looked, that's how he should have been after. If he's going to shave his head, he should have just went to that superstar. This ninja superstar Billy Graham was just really weird. And of course, he wasn't on steroids at the time, so he got smaller framed. He looked almost sick, like frail, compared to how he looked just years earlier with his title reign for the WWF. Next up, The Wrestler, April 83. We got Dusty Rhodes, Ernie Ladd's only roadblock to the fans, and the sensational Tiger Mask. Wrestling at the speed of light. Well, I can get it out there. Let's try that again. Wrestling at the speed of light. There we go. So, Dusty again making the cover, all bloodied, but I remember Bill Apter said in his autobiography that wrestlers were mad that Dusty kept making the cover, but Dusty sold. Dusty definitely helped the magazine sell. So that helped. April 83 for Inside Wrestling. Ivan Koloff versus Ken Patera, the shocking truth behind the Battle of the Titans, and Albano's blood, why it makes Snuka even more thirsty for revenge. That could be from Madison Square Garden. And if it was, I've seen this. I think it may be on an old WWF Coliseum video. It probably is on YouTube, because I know I saw it on YouTube for sure. But Snuka's wrestling Albano, and there's a match with Pat Patterson and Albano too, and both are pretty much the same. So it's like Albano's trying to get the advantage over either Snuka or Patterson, and does for the first few minutes, and then the comeback comes by the good guy. And Albano starts butchering his forehead like crazy, and it's obvious. Anyone can tell it's obvious. He has the blade on his thumb, and he takes a shot to the head, and he just runs his thumb up and down his forehead like crazy. Not like, it doesn't matter. Like, he'll do it not even like sometimes he'll go the horizontal way. Sometimes he'll do the vertical way, which means you're going to make it bleed better because you're cutting up to down. But it was so obvious. You could just tell that that's what he was doing, and he didn't even hide it. And it was the funniest thing. Of course, Albano was probably drunk at the time while wrestling. That probably didn't help. But yeah, it was just, man, he's a character, Captain Lou. Just like that song, Captain Lou, Captain Lou. I think that's on the wrestling album, the first one. Next up, we have April of '83 for Sports Review Wrestling. Will the quest for the NWA Tag Team title tear the Briscoes apart? There's Jack and Jerry there. Plus, we get how Backlund stole the WWF belt from me again by superstar Billy Graham. So Billy Graham could not win back that title. He tried, and he always kept coming up short with Bobby Backlund. Next up now is May for PWI. We get special fan ballot. Should Jimmy Snuka be given another shot at the WWF title? So there's the Superfly. This is look at that. He's wearing red trunks. So he's not even wearing the leopard tights we would know of him to wear as the Superfly. But here we have a nice poster of Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man right there. Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man. Which I swear he feuded with Paul Jones for like his entire Mid-Atlantic run. I swear that feud was just nonstop. Or the Humperdinck. I think it was he started off feuding with Humperdinck and then went to Paul Jones. But still, it was ridiculous. May of '83 for the Wrestler. We get Captain Lou Albano here with Afa and Sika. Roman Reigns' daddy and uncle right there on the cover. And we have Kerry Von Erich. Harley Race will be my stepping stone to the NWA title. No, Kerry, it will be David passing away, unfortunately. That was your stepping stone. And I know that's mean to say, but it might be somewhat true. Because back then, I think they were grooming David Von Erich to be the NWA World Champion, not so much Kerry. And when David passed, it was Kerry who got that title. Only held it for 3 weeks, but in the history books, Kerry Von Erich is a former NWA World Champion. I guess it's better than Tommy Rich, who held it for 3 days. So there's that. Next up, we have Inside Wrestling. The Rich Sawyer Bloodbath continues. Georgia Terror on tour. And Kevin Sullivan's Satan is my manager. So, okay. But yeah, look at that. Buzz Sawyer and Tommy Rich just both bloodied. I mean, those guys, I swear, feuded for that entire year. But because of their feud, we ended up years later getting the Hell in a Cell idea because of the cage match that Rich and Sawyer had. I think it was the last Battle of Atlanta, it was called, in Georgia. So, yeah, I guess we can thank them for the Hell in a Cell. May '83 for Sports Review Wrestling, we get Intercontinental Champion Magnificent Morocco. I'm the only real champion of the WWF. There's the old original IC title there. I do not like the looks of that. That just, I don't know. It looks like almost looks like a boxing title, right? And nothing against boxing titles, but that's what it looks like. I just feel like it doesn't look like a wrestling title. So, but there it is. Next up, we have June '93 for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Rick Martel in 1983, a year of greatness or disaster. So there he is, Ricky Martel. And the color centerfold here is of, if I can find it, Bob Orton Jr., the Kansas City Cowboy. There he is, Cowboy Bob. So that's pretty cool. I remember, it's funny because I grew up, my first memory of Cowboy Bob Orton was, the mid 80s. So I just knew him as Roddy Piper's bodyguard and Magnificent Morocco's tag team partner. And then he left the WWF and I think he went to the NWA for a cup of coffee and appeared on a pay-per-view. And then I think he went to the AWA as well. Him and Adonis were there. And I think he ended up going to, I think the UWF, Herb Abrams UWF. And I remember him being in the AWF in the early 90s, and him and Tito Santana had a really amazing match for the AWF title. It was almost an hour long on TV, and it was one of the best matches I've ever seen. And I'm not lying, that's a true thing. If you can find that match on YouTube, look it up. It's Tito Santana versus Bob Orton for the AWF title. I think it may have been 1995 this match happened, 94 in that area. So check it out. Definitely worth looking, watching. Now we have The Wrestler, June '83. Flair Wyndham match spurs controversy. Should the NWA champion be allowed to choose his challengers? And the Gagnes are keeping the AWA title from Rick Martel. So there we go. We got Barry Windham on the cover there with the Nature Boy, who they would have great matches for years to come. I believe the last match they had against each other was Slamboree 94 from Philadelphia, where Barry ended up coming back after a year, almost a year. He was out from June of 93, came back in May of 94 for that pay-per-view in Philly. Blew out his knee again in the match with Flair, and Flair beat him, and that was the end. Barry didn't come back to wrestling until, I believe, 96, when he was the Stalker in the World Wrestling Federation. June 83 for Inside Wrestling. Bob Backlund versus John Studd, the untold story behind Studd's Raw deal. And Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin's new image, Will Beauty Kill the Beast? So here he is, Gorgeous Jimmy, doing his thing. June 83 for Sports Review Wrestling. Scandal rocks the AWA. Why was Pat Patterson allowed to wrestle Nick Bockwinkel? And Roddy Piper, Florida's most misunderstood wrestler. So there's a good shot of Hot Rod there, yellow shirt and yellow knee pads with the kilt. And man, that'd be a better photo if it was just the whole thing of Piper. But of course, they have to show off these apartment wrestling things on here for Sports Review. I believe it was Pro Wrestling Mag's channel. If you follow that or watch that on YouTube, he talked about the apartment wrestling thing, saying that I think it was Sports Review wasn't selling well, and they ended up putting that in there one issue or something, and it sold. Like, fans were like, "Ooh, this is good." And it really isn't. It's black and white photos of girls in bikinis or lingerie, I guess, wrestling in their apartment, doing holds to each other. And it's only in Sports Review Wrestling. And apparently, they actually released actual magazines with just based on that. And I'm pretty sure that some of the photos were, unedited, so you could see maybe a boobie or something, right? And I guess that drove the guys wild back in 1983 or 82, whenever that came out. But now you can just go to any website on the internet and probably see that now, right? So how times have changed. For summer of 83 for The Wrestler, Best of the Wrestler, we get letters to Larry Zbyszko. What you did is beyond forgiving, and how Andre the Giant reunited Bockwinkel and Heenan. So that is on the Best of the Wrestler for summer of 83. And Sports Review Wrestling 1983 annual, summer of 83, we get Bob Backlund versus Magnificent Morocco, Clash of the WWF Champions. And we have some more, of course, apartment wrestling at the top there. So even in those, you get apartment wrestling. So yay. July 83 for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Tommy Wildfire Rich, The Burning Desire, is back. So he must have caught something from a female. No, I'm just kidding. He means he's ready to win back the NWA World title. Never happened. Never happened. Sorry there, Tommy. And we get Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear, as the centerfold. A former WWF champion is Ivan Koloff. The Wrestler, July 83. We get Ric Flair, I Wrestled the Men Backlund is Afraid of. There's Bruiser Brody and Ric Flair on the cover there. Good shot of that. I guess that's a reverse? Is that a reverse chin lock or is it just a headlock? I guess it's just a normal headlock. No, that's a reverse chin lock. Yeah, I guess that's what it would be. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. Brody's down and he's selling it for Flair. And how Goodnight Irene woke up Ivan Putski, talking about Adrian Adonis and his feud with the Polish powerhouse Ivan Putski. Inside Wrestling, July 83. I've showed this one before. It's a great magazine. You people out there should get it if you're a collector of magazines. A great night in Greensboro. Steamboat and Youngblood win the NWA Tag Team title. Steamboat and Youngblood, ecstasy of victory. Slaughter and Cornotto, agony of defeat. Plus, Butch Reed versus Ivan Koloff has the Russian Bear completed his Georgia mission. Again, I said this before, this is what started Starrcade, this match here. So definitely, if you're a collector of certain, super shows, this is the magazine to get for that, because it has that whole, let me see here. Let's actually take a look at this right here. It is. So a great night in Greensboro. Steamboat and Youngblood win the NWA Tag Team title. So look at that. Imagine if that was a colored photo. Holy shit. Cornado was a bloody mess. Continued on page 54. Let's take a look here. Yeah, right there. So there's the still photos of the match there, and the celebration and the cleanup to Cornado. Just an incredible. So it says here, editor's note, there were 5 other incredible matches, including the ferocious battle between Flair and Valentine for the world title on that historic night in Greensboro. For full coverage of all the matches, pick up the July 83 issue of our sister publication, The Wrestler. That would be that one right there. So it's in that. If you want to see everything, it's in The Wrestler. But if you want just a story on the tag titles, that would be on the Inside Wrestling. Sports Review Wrestling, July 83. Jimmy Fallon's Strange Odyssey, how he became the sport's most popular wrestler, and there he is going after Sir Oliver Humperdinck, making him all bloodied. And of course, the only memory I had of Sir Oliver Humperdinck back in the day was from the WWF when he managed Bam Bam Bigelow, and he was kind of a cartoon character himself then. I didn't realize that Oliver Humperdinck was kind of a douchebag villain manager back in the day until I, started learning about wrestling history as I got older. Next up is August of 83 for PWI. It's special fan contest, win a phone call from Roddy Piper. So there's the hot rod there. You want a phone call from him. And the colored photo is of the living legend, Larry Zbyszko. There's a good shot of Larry there. It's crazy to think that Larry Zbyszko was a WWF Tag Team Champion with Tony Gurria. It's just weird to think that, because my memories of Larry were always the AWA as heavyweight champion there, or the NWA as the Western States Heritage Champion, or when he went back to WCW, won the tag titles with Arn. To think that he was a WWF guy in the late 70s and into 1980 and such, it's just weird. It's just weird to think that. August 83 for The Wrestler. Ric Flair battles Greg Valentine, how the NWA title shattered wrestling's greatest friendship. That picture right there could very well be from that night in Greensboro too, right? So who knows? Tully Blanchard and Gino Hernandez, A Day of Glory, A Night of Horror. So it's a good one right there. Next up, Inside Wrestling, August 83. Nick Bockwinkel's Royal Boast. Forget Jerry Lawler, I'm the king of wrestling. And we get Junkyard Dog, the man who refused to show Kamala fear. So that would have been down in the Mid-South territory of Bill Watts, and we get Bockwinkel and Lawler. Like I said, someone said to me in a video, or in my video on the tag team titles, because I mentioned how Tommy Rich and Eddie Gilbert were the AWA, Mid-South tag team champions. And Mid-Southern tag team champions, which is Memphis. And I mentioned how Lawler always challenged Bockwinkel for the AWA title. And someone, of course, pointed out saying that, well, Lawler also challenged for the NWA title. And yes, that is true. So I will say this now. Memphis used to be affiliated with the NWA, but then they withdrew and they went with the AWA in probably around this era, probably 1983. So then, instead of Lawler challenging Flair or Harley Race or, whoever the NWA champion may be at the time in 1983, he would challenge Nick Bockwinkel. So that's how that happened. Thus, how Lawler became AWA World Champion in 1987, I believe it was. Or 88. Was it 88? 88. He won it in 88, yeah. Kurt Hennig won it in 87. So that's how that all happened right there. So that person was correct. Lawler did go after the NWA title, and they withdrew and it became AWA. Next up now is August 83 for Sports Review Wrestling. We get the Freebird Von Erich feud, why Kerry Von Erich wants out, and Rhodes and Murdoch ride again, the return of the Outlaws. So there we see Terry, Michael, and Buddy, and David, Kevin, and Kerry there, and of course Iron Sheik getting double teamed by the Outlaws. Let's take a brief moment here and talk about the new movie that's coming out. I believe it's this December, if I remember correctly. It is on the Von Erichs. And it looks amazing. I watched the trailer. Now I saw The Wrestler back when 2008, I think it was. The Wrestler came out, and that was a pretty cool movie. And it made you think. And honestly, I feel like Ric Flair is going to be Randy the Ram, whatever his name is, right? I feel like Ric Flair's on that road because he wants to wrestle again, he said. And it's like, come on, Flair, your last match was brutal with Jay Lethal and Andrade and Jarrett. Don't do it again. Just stay away. But I have a feeling like Flair will become him. But that was a pretty cool wrestling movie. Then there was Wrestling with My Family that The Rock helped produce about Paige. That was garbage. I did not like that. It just felt too WWE like, it was like No Holds Barred, back in the day, right? Which was a great movie too, but for other reasons besides just being a wrestling movie. It was just a great movie because of how hokey it was and some of the one-liners in it. But the I think it's called The Iron Claw is the Von Erich movie. Man, that looks awesome. I can't wait to see it. I'm definitely going to get it on Blu-ray when it comes out. I even showed my girlfriend the trailer for it. She was digging it, and she doesn't even really know those guys. But she was like, man, this looks cool. And I'm like, yeah, it does. So I think even non-wrestling fans are going to enjoy this movie about the Von Erich family. And so I can't wait to check that out once it hits theaters and on Blu-ray and DVD. Now, next up is September 83 for PWI. We get a special fan ballot. Bruno Sammartino, was he the greatest WWF champion ever? Well, probably in this era, he probably was, because by here you have Sammartino, Koloff, Morales, Stasiak, Sammartino again, Superstar Billy Graham, and Bob Backlund to choose from. So, yeah, I'm going to say Bruno probably was at this time. And the color centerfold here is of Kevin Von Erich, world-class superstar. So there he is. Who, by the way, for the record, looking back, I get it that Kerry Von Erich won the title when David passed, but I think Kevin Von Erich, I think, would have been a better suited wrestler. He, to me, was a more all-round athlete than Kerry was. And even before Kerry had that motorcycle accident and lost his leg, his prosthetic, ankle and foot and all that, Kevin was still a better wrestler. Kevin was a high flyer. He can do technical stuff. He was powerhouse too. He was strong. I mean, I don't know why Kevin Von Erich didn't get the shot at being NWA champion. And I know he got the shot a year later and won by disqualification. But I mean, honestly, I think maybe overall Kevin should have had it before Kerry. That's just my 2 cents on that one. I'd like to hear what people think, especially Andrea A. I know you're a Von Erich fan. So who do you think should have been NWA World Champion? Should it have been Kerry, who had it, or Kevin, who didn't? So I'd love to hear your answer. September 83 of The Wrestler. We have Nick Bockwinkel forces Hulk Hogan into exile and only the fans can bring him back. And Blackjack Mulligan and Barry Windham has the reunion turned sour. So there's a good one. Inside Wrestling, September 83. Larry Zbyszko versus Tommy Rich. Can the national title survive this brutal tug of war? And Piper loses U.S. title to Greg Valentine. Is this the end of Roddy Piper? And there's the shot of Piper's ear all bleeding. That was the match where he busted up his ear and said he couldn't hear out of it. And then they ended up having the dog collar chain match at Starrcade, which was non-title for some reason, but maybe it was because Piper was leaving the territory, because Piper was in the WWF, I think, in January, and Starrcade was in November. So that's probably why the title wasn't on the line, looking back now. September 83 for Sports Review Wrestling. From the Von Erichs to you, a look into our family photo album. We got Kevin, Fritz, David, and Kerry there. That's an old photo of him because Kevin's got boots on, and Kerry looks really young, has shorter hair here. So, but still, that's a cool one for all you Von Erich fans right there. It's a good early shot of the three brothers and Fritz in his wrestling gear there. Next up, Fall 83 for the Wrestler Annual. We get Dusty Rhodes swears revenge. Killer Khan must be destroyed. And To Hell and Back with Tommy Rich. Of course, Killer Khan was the man responsible for breaking Andre the Giant's leg, they said, that storyline. So he had kind of a big push in the WWF and was taken as kind of a big deal in the territories too, everywhere he went. So he was a big dude too. Like he was actually like, he wasn't muscular, but the guy was just big. He was just So he did look the part. And Sports Review Wrestling 1983 annual for fall of 83, we get Killer Brooks, Larry Zbyszko, and Buzz Sawyer. Did Ric Flair order this hit squad to attack Tony Atlas? And Bugsy and the Boogie Woogie Man, Blood Brothers in battle. So there's one for you there. It's a good shot of the Nature Boy getting, looks like he's getting ready to hip toss Tony Atlas out of a abdominal stretch there. So that's an awesome shot that they got for that photo. Next up is October 83 for PWI. We get 5 former champions answer the question, can Tommy Rich capture the NWA World title again? So there's an interesting shot of Tommy Rich there. The interesting haircut Tommy had there. And we got a poster here of the Junkyard Dog, One Mean Dude. There he is, the JYD chowing down on his chain. Of course, he would be still in Mid-South Wrestling here for a few more months. I think he ends up going to the WWF sometime in 1984. I think it's the summer of 84. He ends up showing up there, just leaving Bill Watts' territory like that too. So that was pretty crazy. Because JYD was like the Hulk Hogan of Mid-South, right? Like he was the main guy, the top dog, no pun intended, the top draw. He was the main good guy. And just like that, gone. Money talks with Vince McMahon. Next up is October 83 for the Wrestler. Record-shattering 7th title reign. Harley Race defeats Ric Flair for the NWA World title. It's a good bloody shot of both Rick and Harley there. Plus, Mr. Olympia breaks his silence. Wrestling 2 is not the man the fans love. I remember seeing that match, again, that feud on Mid-South Wrestling. So I went through those episodes on the WWE Network. And Mr. Olympia ended up turning heel, and because he wanted to be the only masked wrestler there or something like that. It was really weird. And then Olympia wrestled the heel for a while there, and then took off and left. And I believe his name's Jerry Stubbs, I want to say. And I think he ended up wrestling in like the Continental area back in the day with like the Fullers and such in the middle 80s, late 80s. If my memory is correct on that, I'm pretty sure that's who he was. October 83 for Inside Wrestling. Wrestling 2 versus Larry Zbyszko, The Summer Wars. How the national title changed hands. Exclusive coverage of the Georgia tournament. And we have Dusty Rhodes versus Nick Bockwinkel. How this match cost Dusty the NWA title. I think this is when Dusty ended up going there to challenge Bockwinkel for the AWA title and then couldn't wrestle for the NWA title. So I think... Did Stan Hansen get that title shot, I think, against Flair and came up short? I want to say that's the storyline there with that. Sports Review Wrestling, October 83. Can Greg Valentine's claim be true? Rick Martel still wrestles like a rookie. And why the fans must not cheer for Blackjack Mulligan's Berserk Rampage. So there we go for that one. Sports Review Wrestling. Next up is PWI from November. We get press conference, Harley Race. I've proved I'm the best ever. There's Harley with the NWA World Championship one last time on the cover there. He would win this belt one more time in 84, but it was down in like, I think, was it Japan maybe he won it at, I think, or somewhere like that. And we got Roddy Piper, Rowdy Roddy as the centerfold there. Next up for November of the Wrestler for 1983, we get Target Harley Race. Can Dusty Rhodes fulfill his American dream a third time? And why Tito Santana will never join Ted DiBiase's Rat Pack. So that's for November of 83. Inside Wrestling, November 83. Let's see. Harley Race versus Kevin Von Erich. How brotherly love cost Von Erich the NWA World title. We sent Hulk Hogan to cover Bockwinkel versus Wahoo, and all hell broke loose. So Wahoo must have been in the AWA here at the time, leaving Mid-Atlantic area at that moment. I'm pretty sure he comes back to the Mid-Atlantic area, though, as a villain, because he wins the U.S. title in 1984 as a villain, tagging up with Tully Blanchard. November 83 for Sports Review Wrestling. A night of mayhem at the Montreal Forum. Andre the Giant versus Blackjack Mulligan. And Kamala the Ugandan giant, even Bruiser Brody cannot control his savagery. So there we go. Now, next up, we're finally in December. We're now coming home. It's the end of the year. PWI. Has Dusty Rhodes turned his back on the American Dream? There's a good shot of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes there, with a full color pinup of Wahoo McDaniel. Noble warrior, they say he is. So there he is, a noble warrior. Next up, The Wrestler, December 83. Dino Bravo, I can tell Bob Backlund how to defeat the Masked Superstar, and the night the AWA World Title was stolen from Mil Mascaras. So that is on December of 1983. Inside Wrestling, December 83. The experts agree Jim Valiant is the man to put Harley Race's title reign to rest, as well as the Wild Samoans, who really owns wrestling's most vicious tag team. So that is for December of 83. Sports Review Wrestling, December 83. Barry Windham versus Joe LeDuc. The feud that terrifies Florida fans. Plus, an exclusive, your guide to the greatest masked wrestlers by Mil Mascaras and Mr. Wrestling 2. So if you like masked wrestlers, that's the magazine to get there, apparently. Winter 83 for the Wrestler Annual. Why Ric Flair says Roddy Piper is too smart for his own good. Plus, Andre the Giant versus Sergeant Slaughter. Why the WWF is determined to break Sergeant Slaughter. Next up, Sports Review Wrestling, Winter 83, the Annual. Here we go. Sergeant Slaughter, I will whip Angelo Moscow back into shape. And a worldwide conspiracy revealed why Abdullah the Butcher will never receive a world title shot. So there's that. And last but not least, we now have the debut of Wrestling 83, Winter 83, Hulk Hogan, What's Holding Back the World's Strongest Athlete. This is the first magazine of that. That, of course, was to compete with the likes of Main Event Wrestling and such. That's full of color. So Stanley Weston said this will be our full of colored magazine for the fans to look at and enjoy. There it is, folks, 1983, right there. Of course, Starrcade 83 was in 1983, but that would probably hit magazines around March of 84 because of how, advanced they are at putting these out. But you get a gist of where 83 was going and going into 84. A lot of these guys were no longer going to be in the companies that you see them in here. Hogan was going to the WWF. Piper was going to the WWF. Greg Valentine was going to the WWF. Paul Orndorff was going to the WWF. You had a lot of guys jumping ship going into 1984 to work in New York for Vince McMahon. But just an incredible year. Like I said, it's probably the last real year of wrestling before the cartoon aspect of the World Wrestling Federation kicked in with everything. And not to me that that's a bad thing. I like the WWF in the 80s. I grew up watching it, right? But like someone like Pro Wrestling Mags, his YouTube channel, he was born 1970, I believe. So what he grew up on was real pure wrestling from the territories. And I didn't get that. I grew up on the cartoon aspect of the World Wrestling Federation. And I enjoyed it, but that's probably because I was young then. I'm sure, like I said, I don't really enjoy wrestling overall now. There's certain aspects of it I enjoy, like certain wrestlers I still like. I enjoy watching guys like Seth Rollins, AJ Styles, and, well, there's not many, but LA Knight. I like LA Knight too, just because he's a throwback to the Attitude Era, and he really is. And I love the Attitude Era, right? I was a teenager and in my early 20s during that era, so it was fun. But for this era here, totally different. Like I said, 1983, I turned 3 in November of 1983, so I did not watch any of this. My first real memory of wrestling, maybe it was 1984 or 85, probably 85, and it was because of Hulk Hogan. So there's that, right? So Hogan, for as much bad as he did for wrestling, he did a hell of a lot of good, and wrestling fans need to remember that. Don't remember the Hogan of now. Remember the Hogan of then, man. That's why a lot of us became fans. All right, so What did everyone think of 1983? Were you watching it then? Were you a fan of the wrestling then, of the territories, of what federation? You know, did or did you just kind of like not watch that stuff? You know, because like I said, I went back and watched it just in the last few years because I never saw it before, and when I saw it was pretty enjoyable, but at times I was a little bored too with some of it. That's just the way it is. But it was still fun to sit through it and finally see things come, you know, undone with my own eyes instead of just reading them in the magazines, which I've done or did before. So yeah, all right. Thanks everyone for watching this. Again, I guess this is a 45-minute video, so I'm kind of shocked it's this long, but I hope you enjoyed the year looking back at which was 1983 in the wrestling magazine world. And until I do another one, I'll talk to you guys later.